Just a few days ago, I posted a video showing the XH2s on its latest firmware, displaying what it could do in video as far as continuous autofocus goes. And so the question is it good enough, right? We saw what it can do. It's not as good as Sony, it's not as good as Canon. We know that, we knew that already. But is it good enough, right? Some of the comments that I've read, not just on my video, but in other videos like the one I've made where we show what the camera can do, is that these aren't realistic scenarios that, or when would you ever film somebody walking back and forth like that? I'm well aware that you would probably never do that. But it's just sort of a test to show that if it can do that, it can most likely, shoot an event where there's people moving around and that sort of stuff, not walking back and forth like that. I did my best to keep the video as simple as possible. I wasn't trying to trick the camera. I didn't even do the, whole are my eyes showing or not, because I would never use it like that. Granted, there are people who would, but I wouldn't. So again, I wasn't trying to trick the camera or really test its limits. I just wanted to see if it could simply keep track of somebody, hands to their side, face in full view. The only thing that was a little distracting potentially for the camera in the video that I made was a single kind of branch that just hung out about this way, which occasionally it did catch on to that and kind of pulse back and forth. That was the only thing that you could say occasionally tricked the camera. But if you compare that, if you consider what that could mean in a real life situation where you have somebody coming into a room and you want the camera to catch them, and maybe there's a piece of furniture, a chair, something off to the side, could it do the same? So that's why I kind of left that branch there and just to see what would happen. But is the video good enough? As some people would say in their comments that it's good enough. I would say sure, it's good enough for a lot of things. It's not a camera that I would take a chance using in something like a wedding or this moment that can't be repeated. Not in continuous autofocus. I would switch it to manual, and that's the way I used to use my GH5. A lot of people used back in the days before phase detect, and that's what we did. We manually focused, and we learned how to do that. For the people that say things like, well, on movies they have a focus puller. Yeah, that's on a movie. It's a whole different thing. So we're not. Oh Jesus, my cat's going crazy. Here. So as I was saying, if you're a professional and you want to use the Fuji system for whatever reasons, whether it's the film simulations or whatever the reasons might be, because there's a lot of great reasons to get a Fuji, regardless of whether its autofocus is last, first, second, third, wherever it falls. But if you do want to use it, then you have to know that what its limitations are. And I think this video, or the video I showed before, and some of the other videos that a lot of the other guys have been making, show what its limitations are. And this is a good thing to know for somebody who's considering buying this camera. And so that was one of the reasons why, one of the biggest reasons why I made the video. In a professional's hands, any camera can work. As I've said, people were making the 5D Mark II work, 5D Mark III, the GH4, the GH3, the GH5, all these cameras with manual focus. Even a one-man team. Again, you know what you're doing, you can make that work. If you're somebody who isn't a professional, but you've been wanting a Fuji camera for whatever reason, and you've been seeing all these videos, and you're concerned about the video capabilities, but you're watching these videos and you're not sure, is it going to be good enough for you, for your little YouTube channel you're trying to start or something like that. Like my small YouTube channel, like not even 2,000 subs. I make a video every once in a blue. I don't necessarily need the best of the best AF, so continuous autofocus, right? So is it good enough? My answer is yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely good enough. On small channels like this one, smaller ones, bigger ones, huge channels like back in the days with Casey Neistat, and I know he's still putting out videos. I'm just saying, when he was like kind of blowing up, he was on the 80D or 70D. There were moments where the camera would lose focus on him. It was the storytelling, the content that kept people watching. Nobody was unsubscribing because his face went out of focus for a moment, or the wrong, some that sort of thing. No, nobody's gonna unsub. If that's why they're unsubscribing, then that means the content was bad enough that it wasn't worth sticking around for, just because the face would go out of focus from time to time. So for those of you that are considering buying this camera, whose video needs are very low, again, right now I'm just talking about the video autofocus. If your video autofocus needs are very low, very basic, like I said, for a YouTuber type thing, talking head type videos, or maybe for family needs, the kids kind of like, family, it's not going to do great with following kids around, but for like the birthday, blowing out the candles, maybe out with your friends, dinner, drinks, that sort of thing, it's going to be good enough. And who is really going to care if it occasionally loses focus? I'm not making excuses for Fuji at all. Like I said, I would never depend on it for something like a wedding or an event. At the moment, I'm not doing any paid work. I haven't done anything since pre-COVID. Before that, I was doing paid work, mostly music videos, a few events, an engagement, a baby shower. It wasn't a lot, but I was doing paid work, and I tried using the Fuji in small moments just to see. But in key moments, I went back to my Sony and even my GH5, because manual focusing with the GH5 I just found a lot easier. So this, like I said, the XH2s is for sure good enough for a lot of things. Where maintaining focus isn't critical at every moment, such as a wedding, or key moments during a wedding, or that sort of thing. Something like this, it's absolutely good enough. And if good enough is all you need, you don't have to have the XH2s. This is, at the moment, it's the XH1 filming me, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to. I hope this whole video isn't, or at least this part of the video isn't a complete waste. But I'm pretty sure the footage will be in focus mostly. There might be moments where it won't be, or it might lose, especially because I talk a lot with my hands. I don't know, that might be a distraction. I've used it. I don't vlog much, but I've done some with the XH1 and it's worked. I've done it with the XT4. It worked. What you're going to see here are some examples of the sort of thing that YouTubers might do, right? In this sort of thing, whether it's a photography channel or some other hobby or whatever. A lot of YouTubers like to put out the item in the camera and show it. It's not something I do. I always thought, I've never liked that. Just, I got this new camera and you see, and it's just kind of silly to me. Not what I do, but again, a lot of YouTubers do it. So I'm going to show what you'd get with a Fuji camera, whether it's a new one like the XH2s or an older one like the XH1 and the XT4, the XT3. All these cameras were good enough for this sort of simpler thing. Again, whether it's this or something with your family, friends, that sort of thing, it's perfectly fine. I personally would, when I'm doing that, when I want to show something on the camera, I usually either put up a picture of it or just do a separate video of that item, which is the footage you're looking at now. And these were, though the footage you're watching, it's okay. The focus is fine. That was like literally, right before I made this part of the video, I got up, I filmed it, like it just like within a minute. I took no time, no care. So with that little effort, you see what you're getting. I think if you put a little bit more effort, it could be even better. And if that's the case, you could even switch it back to manual focus for a moment just to get that shot of whatever item that is. So there are ways to make this camera work. And again, this isn't making excuses. I still think the video should be better. The autofocusing, not the video. The XH2s is packed with all kinds of features, the different resolutions, the slow motion, all that. All of that is great. It's just the continuous autofocus part, which isn't the greatest. But at that price point, you're comparing it to cameras like the A7 IV. Yeah, the video is definitely behind. And when it comes to continuous autofocus. With Fuji's older cameras, there are certain things you need to kind of worry about. There's a crop factor in certain, 60 frames per second. Um, the XH1, for example, I'm sure you noticed it in auto ISO. It flickers as it changes. That can be a little bit distracting. If it was me, and like for this, I would not use auto ISO. I would just set it to just find the ISO that I want to stick to and stick to it, right? Sometimes that especially if you're by a window like I am now, that could affect the way whether it's dark or light as the sun moves, hides behind clouds, and that sort of thing. But it's doable. You can use it. That's that's pretty much where it's at. Video for the XH2s is good enough, depending on your depending on your needs.